everybody, and welcome back to the third installment in this series, the Photography 101 series, where I share some of my photography skills with you guys by critiquing your photos. You guys sent some awesome photos in. In fact, you guys sent a ton of photos in. There's like 25 different submissions, and I'm not talking about 25 photos, I'm talking about 25 individual people who submitted like between 1 and 10 photos each. So there's a lot of photos to get through, and I'm really excited to do it. I'm glad that I can film another one of these videos. I apologize for the break between episode 2 and this one, episode 3. Some things were moved around here a little bit, got a new camera, and yeah, we're good to go now. So what I'm actually going to do is edit over there on my good computer. I have my second camera set up, boom, boom, over there. Yeah, I guess we'll try it. It's not going to be that great in low light over there, but we'll give it a go. First 2 episodes, strictly Photoshop. This episode is going to be in Lightroom, where I do most of my photo editing. And yeah, so thank you guys so much for submitting your photos. I'm really excited to look at them. And if you're interested in submitting some photos for me to critique, for me to look at, you can submit them to productions@posttopostshow.com. And I'll say this: there have been some submissions recently where people have said, I'm sorry for the quality. I'm sorry that, I'm just an amateur. I don't really know what I'm doing. I'm just taking the odd phone photograph. And you're already discrediting yourself. But then I look at some of these photos and I'm thinking, these are really good. Like, there's no need to discredit yourself. So don't be so hard on yourself. Just because you don't own a DSLR, like a really nice DSLR or a full frame DSLR, maybe you only have a crop censored one. Maybe you're just shooting photos with your phone. It doesn't really matter. Sometimes people just have the eye, and a lot of these photos that have been sent in, they've got the eye. So I'm really excited to look at your photos here. Let's get it. All right, I'm all set up here at the computer. We've got 5 people to look at, or not 5 people to look at, but 5 people's photos. Adrienne, Carter, JT, Kelly, and Laura. Those are the people we're going to be looking at today, are their photos. I'm going to start off with Adrienne. We're basically just going to go in alphabetical order here. So I've imported them all to Lightroom. As you can see, there are 10 photos here from Adrienne that we're going to go through. So let's go move over to the Develop tab, and we'll start our process here. So right away, I'm seeing some pretty awesome things. I'm seeing some reflection, which is cool. So we're getting some symmetry from above to below, which is great. I kind of don't, all this information that's near the bottom underneath that reflection isn't really interesting to me. It's almost distracting. There's a little kind of a dot there, and over to the right, there's something going on. So I'm just gonna move this up a little bit, and that kind of splits the photo. Now, in my previous videos, I said don't do that. Don't put your horizon in the middle. But when you have something completely symmetrical like this, where the water is light on the bottom because it's reflecting the sky, which is bright, and then you have the object in the middle, which is the building, also reflecting, there is a lot of symmetry here. So you don't want to kind of off tilt that a little bit. So I think in my personal opinion, and there is really no right or wrong, but in my personal opinion, it's okay to put the horizon in the middle of the photo, or cutting the photo straight across in the middle in situations like this. So, and it doesn't need to be perfect. And I think that maybe in the horizon it's just a little bit crooked if we look at the building, if you watch the lines. And it's not going to be 100% perfect here, but we're going to do that. Now, I've noticed one thing already that I need to fix, and that is the branch up on the top right here. Now, I could get rid of that by cropping a little bit more, but I don't really want to lose any of the photo that I currently have. That is the easy solution, so let's do the hard solution. Now, the previous videos that you've seen me work or do these kind of critiques in, we used Photoshop. This time we're using Lightroom. Completely different program, made by the same company, Adobe. This is the program that I primarily use for photo editing. Now, in a situation like this where I needed to remove something from a photo, I would actually use a 2-step process. I would finish my edit, I would play with the levels and do all the things I need to do, and then export it, and then remove what I needed to remove in Photoshop. You don't have to do that. You can use the tools in Lightroom. I just find they don't work very well. So, for example, there's a spot removal tool we're going to use, and we can make it bigger or smaller just by rolling the scroll wheel on the mouse. And I'm literally just going to click that, and it's going to choose kind of a surrounding area that's similar, and it's going to replace it. It's literally that easy. And now that was a really good example of it working easily. Sometimes it does not work easy. So we're going to try it again on this branch coming off here on the right to kind of remove that. See, it wants to go down to the water. There's no information there for it to take off of, because that's, there's no texture of trees in there. So I'm just going to manually tell it where to go here. Now, it's not going to look perfect. But if I showed you this photo, are you really going to be able to tell that I kind of clone stamped that other tree over to the right to remove a branch? You're not going to be able to tell. So it's just little things like this that I think improve a photo. And right away, or not right away, but I should have said right away, this is a really good photo because it takes attention to detail. It takes, some people just have that eye, and I think the eye was here. You notice the symmetry. You put it in the middle, basically. You got the reflection, so that's pretty cool. Now, as far as levels go, I'd like to see a little bit more detail in the shadows, and because of the photo here, it was taken maybe on a phone or something a little bit low quality. We have some degradation in the actual photo, so we're not going to be able to bring up all of the brightness in the shadows that we need. And I'm going to maybe move the highlights just down a little bit. There's a lot of personality in those clouds, so I'd really like to try and bring that out if I can. Add maybe a little bit of contrast. Our color balance isn't right either, but we're going to brighten it up a little bit, maybe add a little bit more vibrance. It's a little cool, but that's kind of okay because you kind of see the dead trees in the background there. It's obviously fall or approaching winter or spring, so it's not really a warm time of the year anyway, so it doesn't really need to be a warm photo. Now, there's a couple of different things you can do to create a little bit more menacing look in the clouds, but for now, I like just the fact that this is symmetrical, and it's an interesting photo. There's lots to look at here. Let's move on to the next one. Oh, wow. This is really cool. This is awesome. That's cool. So there's nothing like this where I live. Not really. There's mountains, obviously, and stuff, but it's not like this. I don't think that I could go and see something like this without driving probably like 8 hours. So right away, awesome photo. From a photography perspective, there are a lot of interesting things here. I don't know if I would actually change too much, to be completely 100% honest. I might change the aspect ratio a little bit. We're kind of looking at it in a square orientation. So I might kind of bring it down to be more a little bit closer to 16 by 9 almost. Kind of move that up a little bit. I want to keep a little bit of detail down the bottom right to show the tracks and the lines and stuff. But I just want to take that horizon just out of the center a little bit. So although the snow and the trees are the main focal point here, and that does have a lot of interesting elements, to me, I need to add a little bit more, not to the snow, not to the trees, but to the sky. So I'm actually going to bring down the highlights just a bit, man. It's so weird not working with RAW because RAW files are so much more information to work with. There's just a lot more liberty of things you can do. But with a JPEG like this, you're very limited. I'm going to bring them down just a little bit. That didn't really do anything. So I'm going to add us a little bit more contrast, maybe a little bit more vibrance. Now, it is snow. It's not supposed to be warm or hot. So I'm glad that it has a blue tinge to it and it's cold, but I'm just going to add just a little bit of warmth to it. I don't want to make it yellow, but I don't want it to be like literally blue. If we add a gradient filter to the top, so if you click up here, there's a kind of a gradient filter, and this is a linear gradient filter. There's also a radial one as well. I'm going to use the linear one for here, and then I can specifically choose what my linear gradient filter is going to do. So I want to bring down the exposure a little bit, and I'm going to, you notice nothing's happening because I haven't actually applied it yet. So I'm going to click and drag, and you can see the linear bit. Now, you see how it kind of moves left to right? I don't want to do that. I want it to come down straight, so I'm just going to hold the shift button, and it's going to make it 100% right across. So I'm going to bring this down to maybe about there. I'm actually going to bring the highlights down a little bit. That didn't do anything well. So if I just do that and just darken the sky just a little bit, maybe add a little bit more contrast, it just gives it a little bit more personality. You know, you're at the top of a mountain. Obviously, this is probably like a ski resort or something. You're about to go down this menacing trail. So even though it is a nice, lovely winter day, it almost does have kind of a menacing feel to it because it's, you know, your adrenaline's going and stuff. So I like that there's a bit of that in the sky. Now, if we just press the backslash button? That's the before and the after. So you can really tell, you know, I didn't really do much, but it kind of just added that little bit of a pop. On to the next one. Ooh, okay. This is cool. This is really cool. So the first thing we're going to do is straighten our horizon. Whenever you're taking a photo like this where you can actually see the horizon, you want to make sure that it's 100% straight. So regardless of whatever other thing I do with this photo, I'm going to first fix that and make sure that the horizon's straight. Now, depending on the camera that you use with the lens combination, there's going to be a little bit of distortion. Maybe your horizon will be curved a little bit. There are ways to fix that. in Lightroom, but to me, that's straight enough. So first, straighten the horizon. I noticed something at the top that I don't want to lose. And there's 4 birds up there. I know you can barely see them because they're at the top, but they do add a little bit of interest. I wish they were lower, but I could move them, but I'm not going to. I'm just going to leave them. But I am going to bring up the bottom here because I want my horizon to be on that line of third. Now you can see that I didn't actually get that horizon straight, so we're just going to adjust that a little bit. Oh, just ever so slightly. So now the horizon is basically straight. It's probably off just a hair, but now it's straight and it's on that third. So if you didn't watch the first couple of episodes in this series, when you're shooting, kind of always try and have your horizon on one of the thirds, either the top third or the lower third. So in this situation, the sky is really interesting. We want to keep that, but the beach and the sand kind of, it loses. It's all a bit muddied at the bottom. So we can lose that, move up the bottom, and place the horizon on a third. Press enter, and now we basically are complete. We can play around a little bit with highlights and shadows and contrast and all that stuff. But really, the photo is almost meant to be silhouetted a bit. Silhouette, that's a weird thing to say. So silhouetted a bit. Silhouetted a bit. Anyways, so I don't want to add too much fill here, or I don't want to bring up the shadows a little bit, or too much, because I like, if we zoom in here, I like the silhouette factor here of the people walking along the beach. It's really, really pretty. So I'm probably not going to touch the bottom of the photo, and there's not really anything I don't think I need to do at the top. If I go back in and I use that same linear gradient filter, and I can bring it down, but I don't really want to darken it. I don't want to lighten it, but I might add just maybe a little bit more contrast. Not too much. I don't know. It doesn't really need anything. It's a beautiful sunset. Well done. Oops. Okay, next photo we have WestJet. Okay, did you take this on a Wednesday? Because WestJet has kind of a, it's not really a promotion, but they have a thing called Winglet Wednesday, where if you take a photo out the wing and you show the end of the wingtip, or the winglet as they call it, sometimes they retweet your photo and stuff. It's called Winglet Wednesday. Kind of cool. So, really cool clouds below. I like that you can see the wing of the plane. It gives you a little bit of perspective. So we're going to leave that in there. I want to fix the horizon, though, because the horizon is crooked. And these clouds below are really, really interesting. So I'm actually going to kind of bring this down maybe a little bit. I kind of want the sun to be on that line to third, as close to that, where those two lines intersect as possible. So I think, yeah, see, the horizon's not straight. This is difficult. We're going to lose a lot of information here, but okay, so it's still not straight, but I'm just going to leave it for now. And I'm going to add some contrast. And I really want that winglet to kind of brighten up. I'm not going to take the actual time required to do this properly, but that's good enough, because you want to see, you want to see westjet.com. Not that you're trying to advertise for free, but these clouds below need quite a bit of contrast, so I'm going to use that same gradient filter and kind of bring it up like that. And I'm not going to use the exposure. I'm going to add just a little bit, or not a little bit, maybe half, to the contrast, just to give them a little bit more depth. And now there's something else we could try and do, is maybe add a little bit of clarity. But as this is a JPEG, it's might kind of, see, if I go too far, it's like, whoa. If I go too the other way, it's like, ooh, 1990 soap opera. So if I just want to add just a hair, just a touch of it. So if this was a raw file, I'd be able to do a lot more, but right now I'm just kind of leave it at that. So keep your horizon straight, and that's really the biggest rule. Moving on to the next one. Nice. I love the colors here. A nice day. So right away I noticed one thing that's kind of distracting is this bottom barge bit. So really, I'm just going to kind of just do this. The horizon basically looks straight. It might actually be exactly straight. I'm just going to adjust it just to, it's hard to tell because of the building perspective. But right away, we're just removing that barge, took any focus or any distractions off the bottom of the photo and added it to where you want it to be. You want it to be the buildings. You want it to be the crane in the middle. You want it to be that, there's so much to look at in here. There's a little boat off to the left. It's probably like a ferry or something. you don't want to look down at a barge and kind of see only half of it. Like if you're going to look at something, let's see all of it. So I removed that. That's really probably the only thing that I would do. This photo is, for the most part, perfectly composed. Might add just a little bit of detail in the shadows, maybe a little bit of contrast, an ever so slight gradient exposure fix at the top. You can also kind of get this effect if in camera, if you have like a circular polarizer filter, like this. One sec. So it looks something like this. You kind of screw it on your camera, and then it's actually got, it's not a wheel, but it's got a turn thing, and you can use it to add a little bit more contrast, remove reflections from photos. I mean, I could do an entire video on a circular polarizer, but you can get that effect in camera just by using a filter like that in most situations. But I'm just going to add just a little bit, maybe a little bit contrast at the top. See, there's some color weirdness happening in the top right. That's odd. That's odd. Did you shoot this through a window by chance? Sometimes when you shoot through windows that are shaded, you get some kind of color distortions. I can fix that, but I'm just going to leave it. So anyways, I didn't really do a lot here. Before and after. It's not going to show you the crop, but it just shows you, it brings the attention to the middle again. So we remove the thing at the bottom. We kind of darken the top to kind of squeeze in where our eyes go. And we kind of have this. So it's just, I removed the flatness from the photo a little bit. There was it was a little bit too bright at the top. Let's move on to the next one. Oh, cool. This is awesome. There's a lot of really interesting elements here. So right away, I'm going to remove this big thing down at the bottom. I do find that distracting. I say that a lot. I'm not trying to sound like a broken record, but straighten the horizon, which is probably like this-ish. And I almost want to bring this all the way down, something like this. There's not a lot of clouds in the sky, so there's not a lot of elements there. I think I might want to do this. Now, again, if this was a raw file, I'll be able to do a little bit more. I don't think the horizon's straight. Anyways. See, I know that light is on, which is really cool. There's almost too much light in the background or something. I either want to see this light glowing and lit up, or I want to see the awesome sunset. So this one's kind of tricky. I might actually take the shadows down. I don't really want to see any other information other than the sunset, the reflection, and then this bulb. Bring down the highlights a little bit. I really wish this was a raw file. If you do have the capability, if you have an SLR and you do have the ability to shoot RAW and you have Lightroom or something that can edit the RAW photos, 100% all the time shoot RAW. Biggest recommendation I can make. But pretty cool photo. I mean, really, you have an interesting element off on the third. I didn't do that. You did that yourself. I just kind of brought it in. So you did the right thing. You put the subject on a third. You have a reflection here, which is really interesting. And you have an awesome sunset. So there's a lot of cool elements to this photo. Let's move on to the next one. Nice. This looks like, I don't say Vancouver. I don't remember your email if you did tell me where you're from. What do I want to do with this? This is a cool one. This is cool. I don't think much needs to be done here. Maybe darken down the sky a little bit. Just put this an angle to kind of match the angle of the buildings. Something like this. But then we want to add a little bit more. This looks like you maybe already edited this a little bit. So I want to bring up the shadows somewhat, not too much. I don't want to lose. And I'll bring down the highlights. There's some weird coloring in the sky in the top left. The trees along the bottom I do find distracting, but I don't really want to lose the reflections on the right-hand side. But just for fun, I'm just going to bring it up and look at it. I don't know what I prefer. I think I prefer this because there's no distracting elements to me in this photo. That bird up there is pretty cool. Yeah, I think maybe I'll leave it here. I just want to go back and see. We are approaching some egregious HDR, so I'm just going to bring that back a little bit. So now we can see a little bit more detail in the sky, just a tiny bit more detail in the shadows. And I mean, I really didn't do much. You kind of nailed the photo there from the beginning. Next one. Man, the mountains in the background are cool. So a lot of information here on the bottom. It all kind of runs together, and it almost looks dead or something. So I want to remove basically all of that. I want to bring this over to kind of remove that distracting element at the top left. I'm going to have to do some work here to remove those other parts. And I kind of almost like the ones on the right because they give a little bit of depth of field. But I think I might remove them down to about like here. And if you come into like something like this, and I'll have to remove that one. And probably remove that one. Again, I would do this differently. Something like this, your element here is on a third, as you can see. Whatever that is, raspberry or something. I like you can see the mountains in the background. That's pretty cool. And yeah, I mean, I didn't really do much with this photo. I'd probably add my a little bit of contrast, maybe a little bit of detail in the shadows, bring down the highlights. Vibrance is good. I didn't have to do much here. Well done. Next we have, okay. All right. So to me, the subject, even though the sun is boom in your face, I really love how the light is coming through this leaf here. That is really cool. So I just want to focus in on that leaf a little bit. Add just a tad of contrast and clarity. Bring it back, and then we can start our framing. I'm going to move this up a bit just to lose that leaf along the bottom right. That almost looks like a butterfly. I know obviously it's not, but it kind of has that look to it. I'm going to bring this down just to remove that. And I kind of find this branch on the left drawing my eye away. So I'm going to do this. And maybe this. Yeah, I think I like that. Add maybe a little bit of shadow. And I pump some vibrance in here. This is a very kind of a warm photo because the sun is kind of shining through. So we want to warm this up a bit. Something like that, maybe. It's not perfect. I think there's a little bit too much yellow. So if I go down here to the HSL slider and kind of remove some of the yellows, you can see what that does to the photo. So I just want to remove just a hair of it. It's not doing much. But see how it just like warmed up just a little bit? Other than that, I didn't really do anything. So your last photo here is, I mean, this looks like Florida, Hawaii maybe. Either way, pretty awesome. I actually don't know if I change much. I might bring this over just so we can have a complete blackness on the side there. See how before there's a little bit of information there to the left of that leaf thing. There, something like that. And maybe bring this down to here. I just want to see what it looks like with a lot of contrast. And that's kind of what this is all about. This process is trying to figure out what to do and to play around with stuff. So don't be afraid to play around with these bars and just to have fun and explore. Now I did that because I knew the silhouette of these palm trees would be incredible with that background. It is. However, we lose a lot of information down here. So those palm trees are almost already silhouetted. So I'm just going to try and bring up the shadows and see if we can bring some detail. And see, I don't know. It's kind of, I'm not sure what to do. I might bring those shadows all the way down, add some more contrast, and just go straight silhouette. Could do something like that. That almost looks like a phone background or something, which is kind of cool. And that's kind of what it's all about. It's just about playing around and figuring out what you like and what you should do moving forward. And I mean, when you nail it out of the camera, kind of like this one, sometimes there's not much to do. So well done. Very impressive shots there from Adrienne. Thank you so much for submitting. Let's move on to the next person, and that's going to be Carter. All right, we got Carter's photos up here, and he's got some doozies. He's got some hockey ones. So let's take a look at the first one. This is a lake of some sort. So this photo looks like it's already been edited. And if I could offer some constructive criticism, I would say a little bit too much contrast. So I actually want to bring that contrast slider back a little bit. And since this was already edited and it is a JPEG, very difficult to achieve the actual look that I want here. But if I remove some of the blacks, it's okay to have 100% black in a photo, I think, but sometimes it's almost interesting to have none. It almost gives it like almost a film look. I think your vibrance or your color saturation's okay. It feels a little cool. It's hard to. There's a lot of detail being lost in the trees because of the contrast. So I would say watch the contrast, but otherwise this is a really like well composed photo because of this tree kind of coming out of the left into a third. Gives you a bit of leading lines into the actual trees and the reflection, which is really cool. We're kind of square though, so I might lose some information there. Actually, I'm going to come over something like this. Something like that. That's probably what I would do for cropping wise, but I really didn't do much there. Just watch the contrast. So here again, it's very contrasty, and that comes down to editing style as well. Personally, that is not my preference. It doesn't mean it's wrong. There's a lot of information here that I kind of lose that I want to see, and a lot of JPEG compression degradation. It almost looks like a painting if I zoom in, which there's nothing wrong with that look, but when I look out here, it looks more real, but over here, it looks like a painting. So the mix feels a little bit weird. As far as framing, I really like it. You have the forest around, but it's all leading our eye to the main subject, which is the mountains in the background. And the clouds are exposed perfectly. They contrast well with the mountains. It's almost like looking out a window or something, where the inside or the forest is almost the inside of the house, and the window is those clouds and the mountain and stuff. It's actually a pretty interesting, pretty cool photo. Moving on to this one. So I'm losing a lot of detail here. In my opinion, there's way too much contrast. I'm not seeing any information along the right here, and I can't get it back. So I think this comes down to editing style. This comes down to personal preference of mine. I think this is over-edited. I don't want to sound offensive or anything, but I think this is over-edited. I think there's too much contrast here. I can't read what that sign says. I can't see any detail in the highlights on these steps other than the bottom one. The darks over on the right, or the blacks, it's a little bit too dark. It's menacing. It gives almost like a thriller kind of evil vibe to it, which is there's nothing wrong with that. It's actually kind of cool. But to me, I too much contrast. So let's move on to some hockey photos. Now we're talking. So this is one of the GOATs, Oshie, shootout specialist. Just a little bit of contrast. So you can already notice a little bit of blurriness, and that comes down to shutter speed and a few other elements. It looks like there's focus on this part right here, or it doesn't look blurry, but the name looks a little blurry. The rest of it does. So it comes down to shutter speed. However, I've shot an arena before, and when you're inside an arena and you're shooting, it is very difficult to take hockey photos. So without proper lighting, very, very difficult. So kudos to you for trying. There's a little bit too much yellow. Like his helmet there is actually white. It's not yellow. So we kind of want to remove a little bit of that yellow. And even just doing that makes this photo a little bit more, I was going to say believable, but it's not fake. So if we just go back and forth, see how just removing the yellow, you know that jersey's white. You watch hockey. So before it was almost yellow or cream. So it looks off. Just by removing the yellow, it makes the photo way more realistic or believable. Moving on, A bit of the same issue here as well. So if you move the yellow, actually, my eyes are playing tricks on me because of these seats, I think, in the background. So that jersey looks relatively white. That's my bad. So I want to see more detail in Mr. Godovin's face here. So if I just bring this up just a little bit, and maybe bring the highlights down, something like that. But I really want to see him be the entire focus. There's a lot going on in the background, so I could either add a vignette or do it manually with gradient filters. However, I'm going to try the vignette tool, which is all the way down the bottom. So I can bring it in. This is kind of my threshold, and this is almost my angle or angle of approach, kind of. If I could, that's bad wording, but if I just play around with it a little bit, I don't want anything too much, nothing too much. The color on his face isn't right; it's too yellow, and in some arenas, the way that the lights work, they cycle in color. You don't see that with your eye, but your camera sees it because of your fast shutter speed. So when you take a photo, one half of the arena will be purple and the other half will be green, or it'll be properly lit. So that's what I mean. Like, it's very difficult to shoot an arena. And look at this guy's face. That's funny. I bet you that's Tyler Sagan. I'm going to remove that because I didn't notice that until now. That's really distracting. Yeah, I almost want to put him on a third or something like this, but I don't want to lose those boys in the background. But I don't want to cut off his stick either. So maybe something like that. Let's move on to the next one. Okay, so here we have the yellow issue. There's, I don't know who that is, actually. What's going on here? Yeah, there's some... See, I see the red back there. There shouldn't be any red over there, so I don't know why that's red. Because that's the blue line. So, see, now it looks blue. So there are some... If I had the original photo here, I think I might be able to do something with it, but since it's been edited, I can't really remove too much of what's going on. But his shoulder looks to be in focus. Again, it's maybe there's a shutter speed issue there. But man, how do you? Obviously, this is during warm-ups, but shooting through the glass like that, that's impressive. All right, that's kind of cool. You get some bloodiness on the face. Again, it's too yellow, so it's hard to remove once this has been edited. I can do that. I can remove the orange, but look at his face. It makes it, so I can add a little bit of vignette, but again, it's just adding. Yeah, it's tough. Since this photo's been so heavily edited, it's difficult for me to kind of make something or to kind of fix it when I need to fix. You can notice the reflection at the top here. That's actually behind the shooter. You can see a hand there. Shoulders. Difficult to shoot through glass. That's where something like this circular polarizer comes in handy, because you can remove those reflections with this. Yeah, it's a fine photo. I would just kind of work on your color balance, make it a little bit more realistic. So here, perfect. So you notice that there's no color imbalance. Like, that jersey looks white. The Canadiens jersey looks the proper red. There's some reflection coming up here, which again is the issue I just spoke about. So if I just add a little bit of contrast, it kind of removes some of that. Bring down the highlights a bit. And yeah, you're isolating your subject here. I might lose Buddy off to the left, though. And kind of maybe come down like this. It almost looks like he's following Deneau here, stalking him for a fight or something. But yeah, kind of cool shot. Next, this is cool. I really like this one. Well done here. We're gonna fix our horizon, even though there's not a horizon here. But we're just gonna kind of get that straight. We want our boards to be, for the most part, kind of flat. And it's not perfect, but it's close enough where it's okay. Decent contrast here. I'm going to add just a little bit more detail in the shadows along the ice. And it brought up the shadows in the crowd. I'm going to fix that by using a gradient filter and kind of bringing it back down to where it was. Maybe even a little bit more. I'm going to fix this in a bit, but I just want to move this down a little bit. It brings the attention, boom, down to the ice where it should be. So I'm going to come back off just a little bit. Something like that. There's action here. There's detail. You got the puck. You got movements. Everything's in focus. Yeah, cool shot. Close up of TJ Oshie. So we're back to a bit of yellow in the helmet. So you see, it does remove it a little bit. Let me see if I can zoom in a little bit more. See how it removes it? There's not a lot in there, but there's just a little bit. But at the same time, that also removes the yellow in the boards. So we've got an issue here. I need to zoom out. Cool shot. I like it. I would just watch the contrast and watch the color balance. This is a cool photo. A Holpe watching the warm-ups. You can see a lot of detail in his mask. You got a bit of a vignette happening here. It's almost too much, though. So I might actually bring that back by going the opposite way in the slider. It's not going to work, though, because it's a JPEG. Yeah, it's not going to work. So watch your vignette. Again, personal preference, a little bit too much contrast, so I'd bring that back. And it almost maybe looks like you added a little bit of clarity, possibly. Kind of watch out for your clarity and contrast. Next up, the grade 8 Ovi. So he's out of focus, unfortunately. He looks like he's taking a shot or something, so that's not really your fault. And maybe just a little bit too much contrast here again. Bring up some detail in the shadows. Lower the highlights. Yeah, it's difficult to shoot hockey. It is quite difficult. This one's too yellow. Kind of back to the original problem. So if I remove some yellow, it looks a little bit more realistic. I love that you can see his eyes. Like that's pretty cool. And it's at a bit of an angle, so you see the boards in the background. Kind of want it just to be straight. A little fix like that. And yeah. And your final photo here is not hockey related. It's actually nature related. So you got some pretty cool things here. You've got a silhouetted fence above, which is awesome. I'm going to remove the left-hand side because it makes it a little left heavy to have all that darkness on there. So I'm going to move it to like there so it's more symmetrical. Now I actually think the horizon is probably exactly straight or very close to it, but it almost makes it look like it's not because of the shadow on the right side of the water. If I get out of this, it gives it almost a bit of a tilt because there isn't any detail, and there wouldn't be because that bridge or whatever that is casting a bit of shadow from the sun. But really cool. It's a little too yellow. So, I mean, water shouldn't really be yellow unless the sun is like much lower in the sky. So we want to bring that back a little bit, but we can't really. So maybe I can use the color balance slider just to come down. You want it to be warm, but not like yellow. The lake or the water shouldn't look like pee. So we just bring that back just a little bit. But it's pretty cool. I love the reflection, the highlights along the little waves there. You can see the smoothness of the water. It's a really interesting photo. I love the silhouette in the background. And yeah, good job. Moving on to the next person, JT. JT's got one photo for us. And, you might look at this photo and you think, okay, well, I see a dead tree. I see part of a building. I see some posts. And that's kind of it. But I'll say this. Some people don't have the nicest camera. Some people can't edit their photos. But some people are just literally born with a good eye for photography. And this is the perfect example. Because the photo's not about the tree. The photo's not about the building, really. The photo is about the reflection on that building of the CN Tower in Toronto. I assume that's the CN Tower in Toronto. Maybe it's not, but it kind of looks like that to me. So, the photographer, JT here, could have walked a little bit and taken a normal photo of the CN Tower, and it would look like every other photo of the CN Tower. Did something different here, which is really, like, it's subtle, but it's really smart, and maybe almost he did it subconsciously, and that's what I mean by like some people are just born with a vision, and I think this photo is kind of an example of that. He noticed the reflection on there, and who would think, if he wanted a photo of the CN Tower, who would think to actually look at a different building and get that reflection. So really cool. There's not much of editing that I can do here, but just the fact that you had that kind of vision, pretty cool. And that was the only photo from JT. Now Kelly's got 4 photos here, and whoo, heck yeah, got some Disney stuff. Got some fireworks. Fireworks are difficult to shoot. I personally struggle with fireworks, that's for sure. And so man, there's not much I can do here because this photo is epic. I love to see a little bit more detail in the castle here. It's intense. So I'm assuming you shot this handheld because of the little bit of blur. What's going on? A little bit of blurriness in the movement in the fireworks here, the sparkles. You kind of see how they're all like got this like little. That's just from her going. That's it. So it's very difficult to shoot fireworks. If you're going to shoot fireworks, number 1, shoot them on a tripod, and number 2, practice. Like practice. It takes a lot of skill. I have not mastered fireworks. I'm very poor at fireworks. So I look at this and I think about what do I need to fix. So there's this little post down here that I find just slightly distracting, but I don't really want to cut off the castle because the castle's pretty cool. What if I just do this? Let's just look at it. Yeah, see, I don't like that being cut off, so I'm going to keep that in there. But I do want to make sure that's straight. It does look straight, so good job there. Man, I can't really give any criticism here because you're shooting handheld fireworks, and it's one of the most difficult things to do ever in photography, if not impossible. So there's not really anything I could say like, oh, you should have done this better. Like it's impossible. So let's move on to your next photo. This is cool. I don't know what city this is. It almost looks like I don't know. I don't want to say. Let's fix your horizon, make sure the horizon's straight. And basically, number 1 rule, always make sure your horizon's straight. The sky isn't that interesting as far as clouds, and the water isn't that interesting as far as waves or anything. So I could potentially lose one or the other because I want that kind of horizon to be on a third. So I'm going to lose the bottom. It's a little bit muddy. Put the horizon on a third, something like this. Maybe add a little bit more contrast. So this is a JPEG, so there's a lot of pixelation and degradation and stuff, so it's going to be difficult. Your color balance is a little bit too warm, I think, maybe a little bit too yellow. Yeah, so really, like I like that this is silhouetted on the front, it's black, but in behind you have like a different level of silhouette. There's just a little bit of detail in there. That's pretty cool. I might actually bring in a gradient filter on the sky. Oh man, it's oversaturated. So, yeah, this isn't going to work because it's a JPEG, but I just wanted to kind of bring the attention down to the buildings and stuff. But pretty cool photo. Look at the pups. Nice. Okay, so we lost all information in the sky or above, which is fine. It's a black and white photo. Doesn't need it. As far as subject, are the dogs the subject or is the flag the subject? I don't really think it matters, but I kind of want to lose the door handles, something like this. I want the doggies in there. I want the flag in there because that, to me, listen, dogs are cute. I would love a dog sooner rather than later. As soon as I get a house, I'm probably going to get a dog. I love dog photos. Send me your dog photos. But the most interesting part about this photo is the reflection of the American flag. It's different. I don't know if it was purposeful, but it is the coolest part of this photo for me. So if you did do this intentionally, well done. You've got a really good eye. And the last photo here this is beautiful. I want to go here. Your horizon's it's pretty much exactly straight. I just tweaked it a little bit. I love how the subject comes out of the side there. It comes like through a third. Your leading lines kind of taking you out into the water. It's scenic. The reflection is nice. I really like this photo. It's a really pretty nice photo. You know, we could do this and bring the horizon down a little bit. That almost looks like a Facebook cover photo or something. So the dimensions are We could do this, something like that. I think I probably prefer this. I want that subject to be just a little bit bigger. There's almost not enough to look at. Like this, like there's not really much in the sky to look at. There's not really much off to the right. Yeah, it's beautiful, but there's not a lot of detail there. So I think for me personally, this looks more like a desktop where you want space on your computer to put icons and stuff, but you also want something pretty to look at. Where if I was hanging this photo or printing it or something, I would probably do something like this, something a little bit bigger. Depends on how you're going to use the photo, but overall, man, Kelly, those were some awesome photos. And Laura is next, rounding off this series. Ooh, heck yeah, got some snow. That's cool. So unfortunately, we don't have any detail. We don't have much detail down in the snow, which is fine because there's not any detail in the snow to really see. Snow, right? But it almost looks all flat white. At least on my screen, it's a little bit hard to tell. But this is cool because you have trees kind of coming in from the top here and then swooping down a little bit. And then the reverse of that almost happens with the snow kind of coming up like this. It's not as dramatic and it's barely there, but it works. It's it's not too warm. You've got almost a cool feel to it, but it almost looks a little bit more purple than blue. So see how that just kind of took away some of the purple? So I want to remove all that. There's no purple in here. And magenta, I didn't see any magenta in there when I first looked. So if we do that, that'll remove the purple, remove that purple tinge from the photo. And if we add a little bit more brightness, it'll bring out the blues, just any natural blue that's in there. And I mean, I could add more blue by going down in here and shoving the blue way up there, but that's not what it looked like. I really kind of like it the way it is. There's a lot of elements here to look at. There's the trees over here with the snow on top. There's this rock face here. There's the fence. There's all kinds of things to look at in this photo. So, good job. Next up, ooh, that's a kitty. I used to have a kitty that looked exactly like that almost. Or I dated a girl that had a cat that looked like that. Okay, I'm going to do this because you notice how it was way off tilt. I'm going to bring it back and see the top of the snow here. I'm using that kind of as my horizon a little bit. So when I do that, I'm losing a lot of information, which is the unfortunate part. However, if I bring this in a little bit and bring this up, I'm going to not lose the ears, which is important. I'm going to bring this in and lose that leaf and snow to the left. Now, we have one problem here because the subject is exactly in the middle, and that's kind of a no-no when it comes to photography, unless there's symmetry on both sides. I usually try and stay away from putting the subject in the middle of the photo. So there's not really much we can do here. It's not a big deal. Here, she is a little bit dark, so if we just bring up the shadows a little bit, maybe bring down the highlights. You don't want it to look too HDR, which stands for high dynamic range. Add a little bit more contrast. Now it's almost too. See how the purple's in there? I just want to bring that back just a little bit. Maybe might be a little bit too cool because there's a nice orange kitty in here. So if we just brighten it up a little bit. If I go, see the difference? A little bit more color, a little bit more detail in the actual cat. Before it's a little bit too dark. And I think it looks pretty good now. Next, ooh, this is cool. I really, really like this. It's a little bit too cool, so I'm going to warm it up a little bit. Just a hair. And I'm going to brighten it up a little bit. Maybe add some contrast, but also some detail in the shadows. Bring down the highlights. Might have been too much. Something. I don't want it to be too blue. But I still want it to look realistic. See, there's a lot of purple going on here still. I want to bring that purple down. I don't want that in there. Mountains aren't purple. Bring that up. It's a little bit too bright. And I'm going to bring down the cloud exposure a little bit. I want to do that. Try and do that with contrast versus exposure. But something, just to give it a little bit of personality, a little bit of life in the sky. That's really all I would probably do editing wise. The color's not perfect and I can't fix it right now, but you've got such amazing leading lines coming in through here on on a third, coming in on a corner, running through the third, running through the bottom third line, coming into the middle, leading you into the road and the trees and the mountains. Just a wonderfully composed photo. Very well done. Next up, oh, this is awesome. This is really cool. So right away, I noticed a lot of information in the sky that I don't really need. So I'm going to bring this way down like this, and it's going to allow our eye to spend way more time looking at the cool stuff. The horizon's basically exactly right. I didn't fix that at all. That's on, like, I'm not doing much to this photo. Add a little bit more contrast to the sky above. Bring it down just like a hair. That might have been too much. But this is awesome. Your eye starts, or at least my eye does, starts at the left. Actually, I'm going to fix the bottom. You see this little bit here? That looks like an edge of a walkway or something. I'm just going to do this. So your eye starts off to the right, at least mine does. It moves to the left through the photo and kind of follows that river through the mountains, and your eyes kind of go back off to the right and to the left and kind of come back around. My eye also kind of starts off to the left along those lines and kind of goes through and around the road along there. So when you can do that with the eye, when a photo makes you do that with the eye and kind of follows different paths, and when it has multiple paths and they're all correct, it's pretty cool. So I really like this photo. Well done. And the final photo in this video is going to be another kitty. Black and white kitty, snooze kitty. A little dark, so I'm just going to bring it up just a little bit. I kind of wish this wasn't in black and white because I've been spoiled by the color of the cat from the previous photo. So bring it down a little bit. I don't like my monochrome black and white photos to be too dark. I don't want it to. I almost never want 100% black in my black and white photos. I almost want it to look a little bit film-like. So I mean, I really didn't do. Actually, I don't think I did anything. I just brightened it up a little bit. That's really all I did. Pretty cool. Little kitty photo, or not a little kitty, but a cat photo. Just maybe taking a rest, having a snooze. So thank you guys so much for submitting your photos. Some awesome shots in there. I love going through those. I'm going to film another one right now for you guys coming out in a couple of days or maybe weeks, depending on what else I have planned releasing. So thank you guys so much. I really appreciate it. Send me your photos if you'd like for me to critique them. You can send them to productions@postofoshow.com, and I will review them as soon as I can. This was a long video. I need a drink. Thank you guys so much for watching. I appreciate it. Hit the subscribe button down below if you want to see more videos like this. Hit the like button if you want to see more videos like this, and I will catch you in the next episode. Adios.